Andreas Krieg is with us in studio, a good friend of the grid, an assistant professor at the Defence Studies Department at King's College London. So, I think Hashim said it right there, sabre rattling. I said it earlier, insecurity. It's giving off this feeling of insecurity. Do you think we are getting any closer to a worse situation in the Middle East based on what we hear Iran and Israel saying?
If you look at the title of the conference, it was about to the brink and back. I think we're a lot closer to the brink here, actually. When you listen to especially the Saudis, the Iranians and the Israelis, I think there's a lot of tension in the Middle East, and the tension now is not so much between Israel and the Arab world, it's more between those who support Iran and those who are against Iran. And I think the Saudis are now on the side of the Israelis, trying to somewhat gather some support, especially in DC, for a potential preliminary attack or a precautionary attack, if you will, against Iran. And the question is whether the Americans are ready to do that now.
But wider than that circle that you talk about, Saudi Arabia, Israel, the United States, who else could potentially be in that circle supporting something against Iran? I'm just trying to get an idea of how, because it's easy to point Iran out as the bad guy here. Right. Who else is on board there?
No, I think this is a new conservative, if you will, I wouldn't say a conspiracy, but there are a great range of people who jump on the anti-Iran narrative by saying Iran is the biggest problem, hiding behind the wall of saying it's very easy to point fingers here in a quagmire situation. The Middle East is as unstable as it hasn't been for many, many decades, probably at its most unstable at this point. And, the border between Israel and Syria, which for many years was relatively predictable and stable, has now been somewhat the ground zero for potential escalation of this proxy war between Israel and its Iranian proxies. Now, there are a wide range of different groups who are interested in trying to point the finger at Iran by saying Iran is supporting terrorism, Iran is supporting instability in the region. And the Iranians have a good point to say, actually, no, it's not only us. We are responding to something. It's a chicken and egg. It's not about who's actually starting. You know, this is a huge circus that's going on there in Munich. In reality, all of them are to blame. All of them have a role to play in what is a proxy war in Syria. All of them have a role to play in the Arab Spring, where they have funded or supported opposite sides of the conflict. You know, it draws in Turkey as well. You know, they are part of this conflict as well. It draws in Russia, which is part of the conflict as well. And all sides are blaming each other for something that they've all kind of exacerbated.
Tell me about Saudi Arabia in this puzzle as well. Saudi Arabia, traditionally, obviously, a very big power in the region, but as you also pointed out, closer to Israel, now certainly on the Iran issue. Where does it fit in with its partners? You can throw the Gulf crisis in there as well.
I mean, it's funny how the Saudis are now opting to stand with Israel or against Iran, rather than standing with, for example, Qatar, a country which has always been somewhat in the middle, on the fence on many of these issues. Saudi has tried also in the US, and part of the Gulf crisis was trying to win over the neoconservatives in Washington and in London and in the West, bring them around and say, look, we have one big problem, that is Iran, and it's very easy for the Saudis to do that, because that's for them it's a way out of getting themselves out of this problem, because they've been blamed as being the main sponsor for terrorism all along. A lot of evidence has been provided that they have been in the past, and now it's easy for them to say, actually, no, it's not us, it's actually the Iranians. And now, more recently, they said it's actually been the Qataris. So it's about putting the blame that was put upon them on other people. And the Israelis are now playing suit. You know, they're following that kind of narrative. And so do a lot of conservatives in Washington, who see the world in the Middle East, which is very complex, as black and white, the good guys versus the bad guys. And Iran is just playing that role of being the bad guy, while everybody is really to blame for where we are at the moment. And what is needed is dialogue rather than confrontation, I think.
Just another day in the Middle East, isn't it, sometimes? Andreas Krieg, pleasure to see you again. Thank you for your time. So what do you